Welcome, take a slow breath, let your body relax, and allow this gentle story from the ancient world to guide your mind into a calm and peaceful night. In the quiet cradle of ancient Greece, long before the world was shaped by the ambitions of rising empires and the shifting tides of history, there existed a city-state forged not from wealth or comfort, but from unyielding discipline and a devotion to strength so absolute that it became the heartbeat of its people. This place was Sparta, a land wrapped in the cool shadows of the Taygetus Mountains, where early morning winds carried whispers of old battles, and where the river Eurotas flowed with a soft, glassy calm beneath the pale light of dawn. The valley surrounding the city tasted of olive leaves, wild herbs, and ancient dust, and even the stillness felt heavy, as though the earth itself carried the weight of the Spartan legacy. In these first delicate moments of the day, when the world opened its eyes slowly and the horizon glowed faintly with gold, the people of Sparta were already awake and moving with purpose. Boys practiced with wooden spears, their small hands steady despite the morning chill. Men marched with bronze shields resting firmly against their backs, each step measured and controlled. Women, strong and proud, walked with the confident posture of those who carried the future of a warrior nation in their hearts. The air was filled with the faint metallic scent of bronze, mixed with the fresh aroma of early soil, and every corner of the city vibrated with a quiet determination that had been passed down across countless generations. Sparta had always stood apart. While other Greek cities sang with poetry, philosophy, trade, and art, Sparta thrived in silence, in perseverance, and in loyalty. Their laws were shaped by the legendary Lycurgus, whose reforms replaced luxury with austerity, pleasure with discipline, and personal desire with collective duty. A Spartan child did not belong to his parents. He belonged to the state, to the training that molded him into a soldier, and to the lifelong cycle of preparation and sacrifice. Through these customs, Sparta had become feared across the entirety of Greece. Their warriors were not simply trained. They were forged. Fear was burned out of them like impurities leaving molten iron. Their phalanx formations moved with terrifying unity, shields overlapping perfectly, spears thrusting forward in rhythmic precision. Facing Spartans in battle felt like standing against a living storm of bronze and silence. Yet under this armor of strength, beneath the victories that shaped the pride of the city, there existed a gentler truth, one often unseen, yet always present. Even the mightiest powers are not immune to the slow, quiet touch of time. The Peloponnesian War had carved its wounds deep into Sparta's foundations. Yes, Athens had fallen. Yes, Sparta had stood victorious. But the victory had come with heavy cost, a shrinking population, exhausted warriors, and a society stretched thin by the very rigidity that once empowered it. The city that had once roared with unstoppable force now whispered with exhaustion. And still, on mornings like this, none of that was visible. The illusion of eternal strength remained. The mountains glowed softly as sunlight brushed their peaks. The river moved lazily, peaceful and steady. The rooftops shimmered faintly like old bronze under the sky's first warm breath. The people believed themselves unbreakable, heirs to a legacy too powerful to fade. But somewhere beyond the horizon, change had begun. softly, silently, like the subtle shift in the wind before a distant storm forms. Sparta stood proud, unaware that its foundations, once solid as stone, had already begun to weaken. And so, in this suspended moment of quiet beauty, the ancient city continued to breathe the last pure echo of its former might. A fading song carried gently across the fields. A memory already beginning to slip into history. After the crushing exhaustion of the Peloponnesian War, when Sparta's final victory echoed across Greece yet carried within it the quiet weight of unseen consequences, the once unbreakable warrior state began entering a slow and silent decline, a fading not born from a single moment but from countless small fractures that spread gently through its foundations like thin cracks on ancient stone. Sparta had won the war. Athens had fallen. But behind the triumphant shouts, the city could not hide what time had taken from it. The population had grown dangerously small. Entire generations of warriors had been lost on distant battlefields. The strict system that once shaped boys into flawless soldiers now struggled to maintain its numbers. And while the world around them evolved, Sparta held tightly to traditions that no longer served the age they lived in. The city moved through the seasons as it always had. Boys trained with wooden spears. Young men marched across the dusty fields. Elders recited the ancient laws of Lycurgus. Yet everything felt thinner, quieter, more fragile than before. The phalanx that once moved like a single living creature now struggled to form its old depth. The proud discipline that once made Sparta untouchable had begun to look like stubbornness. And the echoes of their former glory, once thunderous, now drifted like fading whispers across the Eurotas valley. Meanwhile, far to the north, a new power began to rise, not loudly, not aggressively, but with the steady confidence of a city awakening to its potential. Thebes, long overlooked, long dismissed by the great powers of Greece, found itself guided by minds that understood the shifting world. Among them stood Epaminondas, a commander whose brilliance lay not only in his strategies but in his calm, thoughtful understanding of people and purpose. While Sparta clung to its past, Thebes shaped its future. While Sparta relied on old legends, Thebes trained new warriors. And while Sparta's grip on power tightened in fear, Thebes expanded its influence with patience and intelligence. Across Greece, whispers began to spread. Spartan discipline was weakening. Spartan numbers were shrinking. Spartan soldiers were no longer the unmatched giants they once had been. Some cities celebrated these whispers. Others feared them. But all agreed on one truth: the balance of Greece was shifting. Still, Sparta refused to see it. Their pride was a shield stronger than bronze. They told themselves that no city could ever challenge them. They believed that their name alone could shape the destiny of nations. And so they continued to march, train, and rule as they always had. Yet history does not bend to pride. The world does not pause for the comfort of empires. And even as Sparta turned its gaze elsewhere, Thebes continued to rise, gathering strength like a quiet storm building behind a distant horizon. Alliances formed around Thebes. New tactics were practiced. soldiers trained with renewed purpose. And Epaminondas crafted a vision of the future in which Thebes would no longer stand in Sparta's shadow. As the Greek sun rose and fell, as fields turned from green to gold and back again, the two cities began drifting toward an inevitable meeting, one that neither could escape. For Sparta, it would be a moment of truth; for Thebes, a moment of awakening. And for Greece, a turning point that would reshape the destiny of an entire world. Yet for now, the land remained peaceful. The wind still moved gently through the valleys. The mountains remained silent witnesses to history. And Sparta, unaware of the storm that Thebes was becoming, continued to walk the delicate line between memory and reality, between strength and decline, between who they once were and who they were quietly becoming, a fading flame still glowing in the darkness, unaware that dawn was rising elsewhere. As the slow years drifted onward, Sparta's quiet decline continued to unfold with the gentle inevitability of twilight settling over a once bright horizon, its changes subtle at first, almost imperceptible to the proud eyes of its citizens, yet clear to those who watched from afar. For while Sparta clung stubbornly to the steel-like structure of its ancient customs, the world around it evolved with a softness that masked the magnitude of transformation. The once feared Spartan kings debated endlessly within halls that echoed with memories far louder than their present voices, trying to maintain control over a society slowly losing the strength that had once defined it. Helot uprisings grew bolder. The rigid discipline of the agoge, the core of Spartan identity, no longer yielded the same fierce unity. Young Spartan boys, fewer in number, trained hard but lacked the sheer volume of previous generations. Some elders whispered concerns. Others silenced them with pride. Meanwhile, Thebes no longer walked in the shadows. It began to stride confidently into the spotlight of Greek affairs. Epaminondas continued shaping his soldiers, teaching them not only battlefield tactics but purpose and conviction. He believed that unity created power. He believed that flexibility, not rigidity, shaped victory. And so the band forces grew, not just in number, but in spirit. They were no longer merely an army. They were becoming a force destined to challenge the myth of Spartan invincibility. Across Greece, city-states began shifting their loyalties. Some moved toward Thebes, intrigued by its fairness and strength. Others distanced themselves from Sparta, exhausted by its harsh dominance. Trade routes changed. Alliances reformed. And the once steady influence of Sparta began to loosen like a tightly bound rope slowly fraying under constant strain. But within Sparta's high walls, life continued with the same rhythms as if time itself dared not touch the ancient city. Men rose early and trained beneath the sun. Women maintained the order and discipline of the household. Elders recited the same ancient laws in the same steady tones. And yet, beneath the surface, anxiety slowly simmered. Every year, the census revealed fewer full-blooded Spartan citizens. Every year, fewer warriors stood in formation. Every year, the phalanx grew thinner. And every year, Thebes grew stronger. In distant fields, the band soldiers practiced new formations, deepened ranks, shifting movements, strategies that challenged traditional phalanx warfare. Epaminondas watched them with calm certainty, knowing that innovation would be their greatest weapon. He believed that the old ways had run their course. He believed that the future belonged to those who adapted. And so Thebes adapted. It grew. It sharpened. It prepared. Back in Sparta, the mountains loomed silently, ancient and unmoving, as if watching over a legacy that refused to acknowledge its own fragility. Pride held the city together, even as the threads began to loosen. The elders spoke of old victories as if they were eternal truths. The soldiers marched with the same disciplined steps, unaware that the world outside their borders had already begun to outgrow their methods. The Greek countryside felt the shift. Farmers whispered of Thebes' rising influence, merchants discussed Sparta's shrinking presence. Travelers carried stories from one city to another, tales of new alliances and old powers fading like embers at the end of a long night. Yet the Spartans, wrapped tightly in tradition, saw only what they wished to see. They believed the world still trembled at their name. They believed strength was everlasting. They believed the future would mirror the past. But history is never so gentle. And so the unseen pressure settling over Sparta grew heavier with each passing day, not only as a distant threat creeping from beyond the mountains, but also as a quiet unrest rising within the hearts of its people, for although the city still appeared strong, the silence no longer felt protective but instead carried the faint tremor of an approaching fracture, and the warriors who marched through the agora maintained their disciplined rhythm even as a hidden exhaustion clung to their movements. While the young boys enduring the harsh training of the agode showed brief flickers of uncertainty in their eyes, and even the elder seers whispered that the shifting winds no longer belonged to the familiar spirits of the land. So when a group of high-ranking commanders walked toward the city center that morning with hardened expressions and unsaid worries tightening their brows, it became clear that they, too, sensed the change. For change always arrives as a whisper before it becomes a storm. And Sparta's destiny was already bending toward a new chapter waiting to be written.